All right, welcome back. We have another candidate with us. It's James, who's also running for school board here. James, we're not in the car. We want to do councilman in the car. You're actually traveling. You're actually in Colorado?
I am in Colorado, yep.
You're in Colorado on business. So, James, do appreciate you joining us. I thank all the candidates for joining us and being part of this. We only had one that couldn't because of a family issue, but everyone who's joined so far has really given some great answers. So hope we got a great interview with you. Want you to know these are not got you questions. They're really the idea of just learning who James is and what kind of board member you'll be if
Yeah.
you should win. So I want to start off with first introduce yourself and tell people why you're running.
Yeah, so James Mazzati, I've been Township president for about 15-ish years now. Feels crazy to say that. It doesn't feel like I was here that long, but then when I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, I guess it has been.
Yeah.
So my wife's a teacher down in Franklin Township. My daughter's a first grader at Herfville. My degree's in international studies. I spent 15 years in corporate America doing supply chain operations, logistics, kind of stuff. Left as a vice president of supply chain for a food manufacturing company when I bought my accounting firm in April of 23. Just bought my second accounting firm here in Colorado. I also serve on the board of directors for a nonprofit called Healthy Kids Running Series. I am a bowling coach for the youth bowling program at Westbrook Lanes. And kind of what led me to running for the board is my daughter started kindergarten last year. That's the first time I kind of got on like the school district's email lists. Happened to get an email about them having a budget task force. Being somebody who's pretty familiar with budgets and things along those lines, I was like, oh, this would be a cool way to get involved, start learning about what's going on in the schools and all of that sort of stuff. Had honestly no idea we had a budget issue last year. I didn't know about the rifts from last year, all that sort of stuff. Caught on to the committee and just kind of started learning what was going on. That's when I started attending board meetings, and we'll just say what I've seen led me to kind of want to run. So.
Well, Jim, that takes us right to the next question. So we all see what's happening in the school board meetings. What are your thoughts? What's going on? What do you think you could do to personally fix it?
So the short answer there is personally fix it, not much of anything. Like what we are dealing with right now is a group problem. It is a town problem. It is a community problem. And the biggest thing I see impacting our community and our schools, and if you see me at the school board meetings, or if you go look at any of the videos I put on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook page, I usually have, my Be Kind to Everyone shirt on, and because, it's whether it's the school board to whoever amongst each other, we've seen friction obviously between the school board and the superintendent. We've seen friction with the union and the school board, or the union and the superintendent, and then we see it on all the warring Facebook groups that are out there, and everybody's trying to prove that they're right and somebody else is wrong, and that everybody's pointing the finger at each other, and everybody wants to hash up the past and all the things that have done wrong, and this person did this. And we will never be able to move forward so long as everybody is trying to point fingers and blame somebody else. And we don't actually get to the point where we are committed to a future vision, a future goal. And it's just, you got to take it one step at a time. So for me, wanting to run, my platform is effective. I reached out to like 8 different past school board members to find out, like, what did you not know when you were running, that I should be cognizant of, like being on this side of the dais as a member of the public. You often think like, oh, I can fix these things, I can change these things and all that stuff. The couple pieces of advice I got was you're 1 of 9 votes. So like if you come in saying, I'm gonna fix all these things, a lot of times you can't, because 1, you think what you can do, you can't do because legally you're not allowed. But also 2,
Right.
like you have to influence 8 other people on the board, to try to see things the way you want to see it. So the things that I want to be able to do is I want to be able to set an example for what kindness can look like,
Yep.
for, turning the school board meetings into something that, I literally hear people talk about, like, they have watch parties with their neighbors, for our school board meetings
Yeah.
on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, school board meetings should be boring. They should not be entertaining like sitcoms that people want to
Yeah.
watch for entertainment purposes. Like,
Right.
I wish people
Right.
wanted to watch them because they were actively concerned about what's in our school going on.
Yeah.
But that's not why people are watching them, right?
Yeah.
So like I want to be able to bring the boring to a certain extent back to the, but also the engagement. Like I want, like there's so much passion in this town, but I want it to be focused in a positive direction, because right now I feel like so much of it is being focused into negativity. The other part that I kind of already touched on is obviously we are having some financial challenges, and I'm a big data and numbers junkie. There's a lot of, I love to pull data and things along those lines, and so just helping to understand what's happening. And then maybe also, while I own an accounting firm, I'm not an accountant. So a lot of times when I look at numbers or talk about numbers, I don't talk about them in a way that, necessarily goes over the average person's head, which, sometimes when, even as somebody who knows numbers, I sit at the school board meetings and the way they talk about numbers, it's very easy to get lost and confused. And so it's easy to understand where, the rest of the community kind of goes, I don't understand what's going on, and so like, how can we help educate people better? And for me, a lot of times, like, obviously a lot of people were upset about the increases and stuff like that came in taxes this year. And one of the biggest challenges I think that people are frustrated by is because they don't understand why it happened. Right? So like part of the district's responsibility is, if we legitimately need to do that, then we have a responsibility to like present the facts and the data and the numbers in a way that we can explain to people, here's what we did, here's what would have happened if we didn't do that. And I'm not saying whether we should or we shouldn't have, it's just like we don't, and I think we could do a better job of trying to prepare the public for, hey, these are the options that we have. And then, I mean, whether we change or not, but like, I'm a believer of, I think that the taxpayers should go back to voting on the school budget, right? And that puts the responsibility back on the school district to have to do a good job to justify, the trade-offs of whether we should or shouldn't be doing things, So like I said, that's kind of why I'm running, and a little bit about, what's happening, I guess, that, yeah.
Listen, I like the passion. I like that the passion's coming out there. And I just got to go on this on a side note. Have you ever bowled a perfect game? Because I know the mayor, he's told me he has.
I have 4 perfect games that I've bowled. Yeah.
4 perfect games, all right? Because I know our mayor has one. So
no, 4 perfect games. Like I said, I average a little over 220. So I mean, like, it's.
All right, okay. Well, then I'm never bowling.
I bowl okay.
We'll never have a meeting bowling because I'm not. Forget that. I'm not going to bowl with you there. So going on, and you touched upon this. So 55% of our taxes are the school board, right? And we have a 2% cap. We went over that by the 7%. You kind of already touched on this. What do you say to some of those residents, though, because that have that, some of you said earlier, like that sticker shock, when you open up that tax bill and you see that, what do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those areas where, like, and again, you have to be really careful, obviously, as a school board member, because you can't administer the district, right? But like, as somebody who lived in the town for 15 years and had literally no idea what was going on in the school district. And I mean, I probably knew a little bit more than some people did, simply because like my wife being a teacher as a member of NJEA, like come school board election times, we would often get notifications from NJEA about like, hey, here's running and here's who we're supporting and things along those lines. And my father-in-law is a retired school superintendent from Salem County, and then he was also for a brief period of time on the school board over in Pittman, where my wife grew up. So I mean, like, I've gotten like insight and feedback from him, but like from a community engagement perspective, though, like we have somebody in administration whose responsibility that is. But like, if all we're doing is relying on the Washington Township Facebook page and on like Parent Square to communicate, you only get that communication if you have an active invested interest in being on following the district's Facebook page and or you're on the mailing list, usually because you have a kid in the district. Like, I wasn't on it.
We got you. We lost you for a second.
My internet cut out there for a second. Sorry.
Right.
But so like, like we need to figure out like, okay, there's 7,000 kids in the schools, we've got 40,000 residents. So if you figure kind of like, there's at least half or more of the community that probably isn't getting those email communications or isn't getting, following the Facebook page. So how do we do a better job of engaging the community so that people know what's happening? Because the biggest thing, like you said, is they open up they see this big tax bill and they don't understand what's happening or why. And that all comes from, we need to engage the community sooner, more often, and we need to figure out how to do that better. And then specifically on taxes, like I already kind of talked about, it's a lot more of just about how we present the facts, the data, the information, and more importantly, I think also the trade-offs. Like for me, part of building financial projections that I've done in past is, you kind of are building different scenarios. Like, okay, well, if we didn't do that, then here's what would happen. And so usually when you explain to people the trade-offs of like, we're doing this, we're not doing this, you start getting into, just like the nuances of that sort of stuff. And then people start to be like, then you start making difficult decisions of like, well, do we cut a teacher or do we cut an aide? And it's like, well, you got to cut one of them, but how does that work? Or like, do you want to get rid of all the janitors? Well, then who's cleaning up the messes and taking out the trash and like all that sort of stuff? So it's
great point. I want to take you a step back for something you said earlier that really hits home, is that You don't know until you actually get on the board, right? And that's the same thing. You make all these things, and I don't want to say they're campaign promises, but that's what you believe in your heart, and then you realize when you get there, I actually can't do that,
Right.
or I can't. So it's great that you said that. It's I don't think a lot of people realize it. I did not. Right, you say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then you get there like, well, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or that doesn't happen really that way, or
yeah. And that's why, like I said, that's why, like in terms of like the 3 years, like that's the two things I want to get done in 3 years. Is like I want to promote kindness, which I'm trying to do that like from the start, right, and just like hopefully by being able to set an example and all of that sort of stuff. And then this financial planning thing. I mean, this is people, at the Meet the Candidates event last week. I got asked like, what are you going to do about next year's budget? And I was like, probably not much of anything. Like by the time the election goes through, you don't get on the board till January. You're voting on a budget in April and May. Like it's mostly done already. There's not much as a new board. But what I can do is I can ask questions to understand what's going on, and then start more of the questions about like, okay, what do we need to be doing differently for the 26-27 budget year? So again, I don't want to like overpromise. And for me, it's just being able to like, how do we improve the transparency around communication, what's happening, what's going on, all of that sort of stuff. And those are things that, again, I'm not the end-all be-all to do things, but at least when I get on the board, I can try to advocate for those things. But I'm not going to promise they're going to happen because, again, I'm one of 9 votes.
Yeah, listen, that's a great answer, and that's a great to let people know that's you're right. By the time you get there, most of that's already been set in stone, right? You can have a little bit of input, but there's not really much you can do to change it. So it's a really valid point, and kind of takes me to the next one. We kind of touched upon this. So many residents have said meetings have become a circus. Have they become a circus? And you said that yourself. That agreed. I have people the same way. And another candidate was saying the same thing. Is like people do watches for entertainment. How do we change that? And I do like your answer. Make it boring. Make it boring in the fact that it's not entertainment, right? Because it's not supposed to be, right? And it's not a cast of characters up there. This is not a TV show. It's not a reality show. This is people's lives, and these are kids at stake here.
Right.
So I guess we all kind of agree that it's become this mess that we don't want it to be, and it does need to be changed.
And at the last board meeting, not the last board meeting, sorry, I was in Colorado. I wasn't there last night, but at the prior one, I made a comment. Is you can't put a fire out by using gasoline. Right? Like, it does not work. And the part of the problem that I see is regardless of, like, again, it's very clear right now that anybody who pays attention to these things, that like we have sides in this town. We have the sides that are pro-union, or the sides that are pro-Hibs, or the sides that are, Democrat or Republican, or however you want to try to divide things up. People feel divided right now.
Absolutely, yes.
And the problem is so long as people want to try to remain divided and point the finger and blame other people, part of what we're doing is we're putting gasoline on the fire, saying that like, well, this is how you put it. Well, no, all you're going to do is, you're poking the bear. You're instigating somebody else to have a negative reaction to your negative reaction. So until like my message to the community is like, the board is only one spot. It's only one place. And getting elected to the board, I'm only one person, right? So part of what I can say is like, I'm going to try to advocate for like, we want to fix these problems. It can start with the board, but the bigger and faster way to start this is for more people in the community to be advocating at the board meetings. Like choosing the right words and not being inflammatory and incendiary, but still being able to be critical of the people that are sitting up at the dais is very possible to do, right?
Yeah.
But if you're using language that is going to incite emotions and is going to incite anger, and people want to, respond and to retaliate, like we're going to constantly be in this position where people are going to feel the need to defend themselves and stuff like that, which prevents us from actually focusing on what are the goals, what are the challenges, what are the problems, and how can we find commonality to actually want to work together. So we're not focusing on the right things because we're too busy, like, again, pouring gasoline on things. So like, it's not going to be just me. People need to take a step back, and I mentioned it at another board meeting where I was like, somebody needs to be willing to say, I'm sorry. Somebody needs to be willing to say, I'm wrong. Somebody needs to be the first person to extend the olive branch and start the momentum and start the ball rolling of, we want to, in this community, start behaving differently and setting that example for our kids of, you can stand up for yourself. You can advocate for the things that you think are important, but you can do it in a way that doesn't bring down other people in the community, so that we can still be working and building towards things. And it's difficult to do. It's just, so that's what I'm saying, like, it's not easy. And I've told people, if elected to a 3-year term, this is a challenge in our community right now that I think is a 5 to 7 year problem. And I'm not saying that because I'm planning to run for another term if I get on.
Right.
This is absolutely, like, I am only part of trying to be the start to fixing something, and more people are going to hopefully be inspired by this or get, behind it and be willing to help push this forward, whether they run for the board or they just take a more active role in these groups and in communities and other things along those lines to help spread that message.
James, let's talk a little bit about the union influence. And there's been a growing concern that the influence of the unions on the board. What's your view on that relationship? How can the board ensure that decisions are made fairly, putting students and taxpayers first?
Well, so I'll be honest, I don't know that students and taxpayers come first, right? So, I think students do. Let me rephrase. Students come first. The staff and the teachers come second. In my opinion, the taxpayers come third, right?
Okay.
The taxpayers absolutely fund the schools, and for that reason, they should know where their money is going. They should have input into, what the priorities of the school, are, right? And so in terms of hey, do we want to spend our money on this or do we want to spend our money on that? What's the bigger priority for us to do? The school board should be listening to the community and the taxpayers around where to prioritize funding, right? In terms of that funding though, right, our number one priority is absolutely, how do we provide the best quality education and the best quality environment for the students to be successful and to thrive in? Well, you can't not have that without teachers who aren't afraid to come to work today, without teachers who are excited about what they're doing, without teachers having the tools and the resources they need to have to provide that too. So again, I don't know that, when people say that there's influence from the teachers union, well, one, we are in a union environment. I've worked in manufacturing environments, with union workers. When you are in a union environment, there is always a certain influence. But there are union environments where you have a contentious relationship, and you can have union environments where you can have a collaborative relationship. Sure. So saying that there's union influence, to me, there's always going to be union influence anywhere you have a union. That's part of the point of unions and collective bargaining.
Good point.
So, and again, they make up 60+% of our budget when you consider their salaries and benefits. So to not acknowledge that they have a strong influence, you can't change that. That is the nature of what we operate under. What I think we need to, so it's not, we need to listen, we need to support. The issue where I see, when I hear people saying oh, the union's exerting too much influence or things along those lines, again, for me, it goes back to this, we're drawing lines or we're drawing sides. I want the union to be vocal. I want them to be advocating for teachers, but the fact that union leadership is having to get up there and they feel that's the place and that's the time for them to have to fight with the superintendent or to fight with the board and things along those lines. I would love to see more of that, where, hey, let's fight in behind closed doors, and how do we show more of the constructive aspects to the public, right? How do we say, hey, we have things that we disagree on, but here's where we're making progress. I want you to I want to see and hear that there are conflicts, right? But it doesn't need to become the grandstanding that I feel like it currently is, where we're trying to show, who has more muscle and who can flex more, which is what it currently feels like to me.
So James, we just came in under the 2-minute mark, so we're not going to get through all the questions. Yep. Real quick, want to talk to you real quick about our superintendent. You did mention him multiple times. Mm-hmm. Is he the right person to do the job? Is he the person? What is your feeling about him?
So here's I have mixed feelings. One of the things that as myself, when I was in leadership positions, I personally had to get leadership coaching, right? Just because somebody sits at the top of an organization doesn't mean that they're infallible or that they don't have personality or characteristic traits that need coaching and guidance and things along those lines, right? So my personal interactions with Dr. Hibbs is that he has a lot of really great ideas. I really do believe in terms of being a visionary for what our school district could be, he has a great vision for things. Now that said, I've seen a lot of business leaders, who have great visions, but then if they can't get people on board with the execution of that, then things that's where things can fall apart. And so, how well is he doing at getting the right leadership in administration? How is he doing with communicating his vision to union leadership, to, the supervisor, all of that sort of stuff? I feel like, again, communication in general is a problem. So to me, he might be the right person with the right coaching, mentorship, guidance to be able to say hey, here's where we think, as a board, you're falling short, and here's what we're going to do to help support you, cover those gaps, and then after you provide coaching, support, and things along those lines, if things don't change, well, then that's when you potentially have to make a change in leadership. But just to be like, hey, this person's not perfect and they have flaws, hate to break it to you, we all do. Like, Dr. Hibbs is human, like every single one of us.
Right.
And so rather than trying to point out those flaws,
Absolutely.
for me, it's how do we try to, and one of the things I learned was like, stop trying to invest more time in the areas that you're weak and focus on the areas where you're strong, and then surround yourself with people who are better at the things that you're weak at. So like part of it as a board is like understanding that for him, and then giving him the support to say like, hey, you need help here. You need to get somebody on your staff that's better at these things than you are, so that you have the right team supporting you and that you're driving the ship with the support of a lot of really great, awesome people. And so, like I said, like to say if he's the wrong person, like right now, like he's fighting an uphill battle because of just everything that's going on. So right now it's really hard to say that. And again, I haven't followed enough of what happened in the past, but so much for me is like right now, it doesn't matter who's in that seat, he's not being set up for success. And as far as I see it, like he's on a contract for the next 2 years, like we can decide we can make his job difficult for the next 2 years, or we can try to figure out how to make him as successful as possible. I'm not saying that guarantees we renew his contract in 2 years, but part of what we need to do is whether we renew him or not, we got to realize we're going to hire somebody else to come work at this district. And if we don't make it look appealing, nobody's going to apply to work here, right? And then we're in a really big challenge because, we gotta show that we can do better. If for no other reason, then maybe we can set him up for success, and then great, we can renew him, and our district will be doing great. But if not, we gotta realize that how we're treating him today is going to impact and influence who we potentially get as a candidate to replace him when his contract ends, because he may decide he doesn't want to renew, even if he wants to renew him, right? So you never know. So that for me is the biggest challenge with like, do we have the right super or not? We need to, with all faith and forward, do that because it impacts the future, whether we believe it or not. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, Jay, listen, great answers, really, really, really thorough answers. I like that. So we didn't get to everything. All right, so we know early voting started here in New Jersey, right? And it runs right through next Tuesday. Tell me why somebody should vote for James. When they get in there and they're making that vote, tell them why they should vote for James.
Sorry, I'm having internet connectivity.
That's right.
I'm sure I'm making some really funny faces right now.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, can you hear me? No.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? James, can you hear me?
Right now. Yeah, I might.
All right.
My internet seems to not be being friendly right now. I'm sorry.
All right. Can you give us your close? You back?
I think so.
I got you. All right. So, like I said, early voting already started here in New Jersey.
Yep.
Next Tuesday is election day. There's people that are undecided. Tell me why they should vote for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for number one, if you're looking for something different than what's going on, if you're looking for a different mindset going on to the board in terms of how to try to work together, how to try to work with different people, how to try to set a different tone for what's going on, and if you feel like knowing that you don't understand what the financial issues are and you'd like to see better communication around that, whether over the next 3 years, like I said, I can't promise what happens for this coming year, but hopefully I can at least provide enough influence to try to communicate that stuff. I think I'm not going to claim to want to change the world. I think this is a big ship. It's going to take a long time to kind of straighten out and get going in the direction we want. But if you want to start going that direction, I think I'm bringing the right mindset. I feel like I'm bringing the right mentality and the right areas of focus to get us steered back in that direction. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would present.
James, listen, great answers, great responses. Really appreciate you today. I appreciate all the candidates put their name on a ballot. I think it takes a lot to do that. A lot of people talk about it. Not everybody does it, so you did it. So appreciate that. Safe travels home, and good luck next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.